talked about variables. We made our program interactive by making the Scratch sprite to ask questions, and then we also talked about how to compose the sentence, which is partially made out of words and spaces and characters that we want to display verbatim, and partially made out of results that are either calculated or based on the answer to the question that Scratch asked. So what we'll do today is to continue with that topic, and this time we'll talk about conditional statements. Okay, how do you make Scratch do something sometimes, but other things other times? So we'll write programs to do just that. So let's go ahead and go back to the notes that we captured, or the files that we captured the other day, which is already online. I think I uploaded that pretty much right away after the class. And we'll go to, I guess we don't have to look at these. Okay, we'll just go ahead and write a new program. Let's say I want to write a program to find the maximum of two values that you input. Okay, it's not really that interesting, but once again, we only want the program to illustrate how you can control the flow of the logic. So in this case, I'll just start with something that's really simple. I will have two variables. Okay, I'll have a variable x, and I'll have a variable y. Okay, and to make the program as simple as possible to begin with, I'll just do the bare minimum. I will have the program to start when the green flag is clicked, and then I go to variable. I will set the first variable to something, set the second variable to something. So let's say the first variable x, I will set it to a value of 23, and the second variable I set it to a value of 17. Let me turn off this bank of light, because otherwise the contrast is too low, and it's pretty hard to read. And then the rest of the program is just to figure out, does x have the maximum or does y have the maximum? Okay. In other words, I cannot always just say that x is the maximum, because sometimes y is bigger. So what I want to do is to make a third variable, which is not necessary, but I'll do it anyway. I'll make my third variable z, and z will contain the maximum of the two variables, of the two values. Okay. I can't just say that z has the value of x, because sometimes y is larger. I cannot just say that z has a value of y, because sometimes x is larger. So what I need to do is to figure out, okay, I want z to have the value of y if y is greater than x. Otherwise, I want it to get the value of x. Does it seem reasonable that this is the logic? Okay. So what I can do now is to go to the Control tab and figure out, okay, what can I use to get that done? Okay. Let's just take a look at some of these things here. Okay, wait obviously is not going to help me. Forever do something is not going to help me. Repeat is not going to help me. I'm not trying to do something again and again. This is just done once. Broadcast is not going to be helpful. Forever if is not going to be helpful. If may be helpful. Now this program, there are several ways to do it. You can definitely use if to do it, but the better way to do it is to use if else. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and pick if else in this case, and then say, okay, I know sometimes I want to set z to the value of x. I know sometimes I want to set z to the value of y. Okay? In other words, this particular construct gives the program the ability to make a decision. And based on the decision, you can either do what is between if and else, or you can do whatever is after else. Okay? But not both. So the question is, what is the condition that has to be true in order for me to make a copy of x into z? That's the question.
X must be greater than y.
Greater than or equal to is fine as well. But we don't have greater than or equal to, so greater than is better. Okay, then we go to operators, because comparison is an operator. And you can pick either one, less than or greater than is fine. You just have to flip, whatever you're comparing. So I'll just go ahead and pick less than, and I'll say if y is less than x, then we want to make z the same as x, because we're trying to find the maximum. And we'll just go ahead and end this program the way it is right now. And basically we rely on the display of the values of the variable to tell me whether the program is doing the right thing or not. Yep.
What's the difference between stop script and stop all?
Stop all will stop all the sprites. Stop script will only stop the sprite that we are using right now. If you have multiple sprites, you can basically stop a particular sprite if you just use stop script. If you say stop all, it will stop all the sprites, and the entire program will stop in that case. We only have one sprite, so it doesn't really make any difference. You can also go to just have a long click, then you go to help, and it tells you stops everything, which is not very helpful because stop all versus stops everything is about the same. And we can take a look at this one too. Stop script, keep doing this, and stop running this particular script. So basically one applies to one sprite, the other one applies to all the sprites. If I remember correctly, even one sprite can run multiple scripts all at the same time. So that makes it kind of interesting too. Okay, are we ready to run the program? This is not going to be a very interesting program because this is all it does. The program runs just like this with no interaction whatsoever, but it does tell me that z gets the value of 23, and 23 is the maximum of the two. Is that okay? So what I want to do, just to make sure the program is working properly, I'll change my y to 71, run the program again, and sure enough, z now gets a value of 71, so it seems to find the maximum just fine, not a problem. So are we doing okay with the basics of a conditional statement? Okay. Let's go ahead and save this program, and then we'll move on and talk about another program. And I will name this program Find Max 2. In other words, I'm trying to find the maximum of two variables. How about three variables? How do you write a program to find the maximum of three variables?
Nested if else?
Hmm?
A nested if statement?
Well, we don't have else if, so we have to rely on whatever we have here to get it done. Okay, question?
You can also put in or statement. So if or in an if, so if you have your third variable say t, you could put it as if t is greater than the other two.
Okay.
Then set x or z to t.
There's several ways to do it. That's one way. But another way to do it is to look at it from the control perspective. So this way, I'm going to change the program just a little bit by adding a new variable. We'll call it w, wxyz. So this time I want to find the maximum of w, x, and y and put it into z. So z will still contain the maximum, but this time we have three variables to consider. So what that means is sometimes I want z to be the same as x, sometimes I want z to be the same as y, and sometimes I want z to be the same as w, right? Those are the three possible actions that I might want to take. But a conditional statement, if you look at the shape of a conditional statement, it can only handle two possible choices. Okay, it can make a decision and go either this way or the other way, but there's no third way to deal with. So the only way, or one of the many ways, but this is the easiest one, to make three options out of an if-else statement is to embed it like this. So now you can see there are three empty slots where I can put a statement. This is the first, this is the second, and this is my third. Okay? Without even thinking about the logic, I'll just go ahead and say that sometimes I want z to be the same as w. if I can somehow confirm that W is the largest of the three, I can make this work. Sometimes I want to make Z the same as X. And sometimes you already know what I will do next. I want Z to be the same as Y, because that's my last choice. Okay? In other words, I'm not writing the program from top to bottom. I'm writing the program in a slightly different way. I'm just thinking that, okay, I know sometimes W is the maximum, sometimes X is the maximum, sometimes Y is the maximum. Then I go back and ask the question, but how do I confirm that W is the maximum of the three? How do I confirm that X is the maximum of the three? And how do I confirm Y is the maximum of the three? So here is what gets a little bit interesting, because it has to do with the operators that are supported. If you look at the comparison operators, it only has less than, equal than, and greater than. There's no single less than or equal to comparison operator. There's no single greater than or equal to, which kind of makes it a little bit difficult to express the logic that I want to express originally. Okay? What does it mean when W is the maximum of the three variables? Yep.
If W is the maximum, then X and Y have to be less than
Or equal to.
or equal to. Yeah.
Okay? Because the three numbers can be identical, then I can either pick W, X, or Y as my maximum. Okay, so I want to make sure that I don't lose track of that. Well, let's just do it the obvious way, which is usually incorrect, but I will point out why it is incorrect. Okay? So the incorrect way to do it is you have to rely on AND, because in order for W to be the maximum, W has to be greater than X, W has to be greater than Y. So you have to use an AND to make sure that it is greater than both of the two other variables. Okay? So that means after the AND, I have to pick the comparison. I have to make sure that W is greater than X and W is greater than Y. And now I can just go ahead and pick the variables. Okay, here we have W, X, and Y. Okay? Now this logic is actually flawed, but I will show you why it is flawed later on. So in this case, it's telling me that if W is greater than X and W is greater than Y, then make Z the same as W, and then get out of the entire conditional statement, get out of the entire construct. Is that okay? Now, I can probably do something similar to whatever is inside here. So I can just right-click, do a duplicate, and put it here. Oops, I guess. There we go. Except this time, I want to compare X instead of W. So I would pick X to be here, and throw this X away, put a W here. And I want Y to go into this place, throw the W away, oops, I take it back, Y should go here, and X should go here. Okay. The only reason I would end up here is because it is not true that W is greater than X and W is greater than Y. So I can conclude that W is not the maximum. If W is not the maximum, technically speaking, I don't really need to compare to W anymore. I just have to see whether X is greater or Y is greater. In other words, I could get away with just this part here. Does everybody see why the inner conditional statement can use a simplified comparison? Is that okay? Okay. So technically speaking, this should work, right? I mean, it should find the maximum